What happens when entitlement turns into aggression, and one student's right to belong is challenged in front of the entire university? When 19-year-old Jamal Carter sits at a desk he believes he's earned, he never imagines that a single slap from privileged Lauren Whitaker will ignite a campus-wide reckoning. This isn't just a story about a moment of anger. It's about the hidden systems of power that allowed it to happen, and the courageous choices that followed. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon so you never miss another story that dives deep into real issues like this one. Let's help this channel hit 1,000 subscribers so we can bring you even more powerful stories. Jamal Carter stood at the entrance of Brookstone University, staring up at the towering brick buildings that stretched toward the sky like monuments to a history he wasn't sure included him. His worn sneakers shuffled nervously on the stone walkway, the weight of his second-hand backpack pressing against his shoulders. Inside that bag sat the letter that had brought him here, a full academic scholarship earned with late-night study sessions and years of sacrificing weekends to work double shifts at the corner grocery store. His mother's words echoed in his mind, "You belong here. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." She had said it that morning while adjusting his collar with hands calloused from years cleaning hospital floors. Across campus, Lauren Whitaker was sipping a $7 coffee from the boutique cafe her family frequented. Her blonde curls were perfectly styled, her designer boots clicking confidently on the stone steps of Harrington Hall. Lauren's last name wasn't just familiar on campus, it was engraved in brass on 2 library wings and the alumni donation plaque in the student union. Her father, Gregory Whitaker, sat on the board of trustees. Her mother had been crowned homecoming queen back in the 80s. This campus was as much a part of her identity as her own name. As Lauren scrolled through her phone, barely noticing the students she breezed past, her notifications were flooded with reminders from her mother about the upcoming Founders Gala. "Smile for the donors, darling. Be the face they love to support," the text had read. Jamal, meanwhile, was carefully navigating the maze of academic buildings, following the printed map from orientation. Room 212. Advanced Social Ethics was his first class of the semester, a course recommended by his community mentor as a space that would challenge him intellectually and personally. He arrived early, of course. Always early. Always prepared. Always twice as ready to prove himself as anyone else in the room. The classroom was empty except for a janitor finishing up wiping the whiteboard. Jamal chose a desk near the window, unpacking his notebook and arranging his pens with ritual precision. He had learned long ago that being visible but unproblematic was the safest strategy in predominantly white spaces. Meanwhile, Lauren was wrapping up her conversation with friends near the quad fountain. Her laugh was bright practiced for social media and sorority mixers alike. As they walked together towards class, her friends instinctively cleared a path for her, the unspoken hierarchy of campus life in full effect. They entered room 212 2 minutes before class started. Lauren's eyes narrowed the moment she saw him. There, sitting in what she had come to consider her seat, 3rd row, second from the window, was Jamal. For the entire semester prior, she had claimed that desk. Not officially, of course, but in the way students like her did, with silent ownership reinforced by social expectation and unspoken rules. Lauren paused at the doorway, her friends halting behind her. "Excuse me," she said loudly enough for the entire class to hear. "You're in my seat." Jamal looked up momentarily confused. "I'm sorry," he said with a calm, measured tone. "I didn't realize seats were assigned. They're not officially," Lauren said, crossing her arms, her tone growing sharp. "But everyone knows that's where I sit." A low murmur rippled through the room. Students began pretending to scroll their phones, unwilling to meet either of their eyes. Jamal's stomach tightened, but he kept his face neutral. "It's fine," he said, starting to gather his things. "I'll move." From the doorway, Professor Claudia Rivers, a respected voice in the ethics department, stepped in. "Lauren," she said, her voice carrying authority sharpened by years of teaching, "there are plenty of open seats. Class is about to start." Something in Lauren's expression flickered. A mix of indignation, entitlement, and wounded pride surged inside her. She could feel her friends watching. She could feel her status slipping in front of the entire room. Her voice rose without warning. "No." "It's not fine," she snapped. "I've sat there all semester. Why does he think he can just take whatever he wants?" Jamal froze mid-motion, textbook half closed in his hand. The room went utterly silent. Somewhere a phone camera clicked. Lauren took a step closer. Her friends exchanged nervous glances, unsure how far this would go. Jamal stood fully now, his posture straight, shoulders square, eyes level. "I earned my place here," he said, quietly but firmly. The air shifted. Before he or anyone else could react, Lauren's hand flew up, and in front of 20 silent witnesses her palm struck his cheek. The sound of the slap hung in the air like a gunshot. A stunned silence followed. Jamal stood motionless, his cheek burning with the sharp imprint of Lauren's fingers. The entire class had frozen, some students staring wide-eyed, others staring down at their desks, pretending not to see, but hearing every second of it. Professor Rivers reacted immediately. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor as she stepped between them. "Miss Whitaker, outside, now!" Her voice left no room for debate. Lauren blinked, as though waking from a dream, or, more accurately, from a haze of unchecked privilege. Her face turned pale, but she held her chin high as she walked out of the room, followed by her entourage, their whispered disbelief trailing behind her. Jamal sank slowly back into his seat, his heart pounding so loudly it drowned out the ambient noise of shifting papers and awkward coughs. He noticed classmates stealing glances at him, but no one dared say a word. Someone in the back of the room whispered, "Did that really just happen?" And then another unmistakable click, a second phone camera capturing the aftermath. Professor Rivers looked at Jamal, her usually calm expression tight with concern. "Jamal, are you all right?" she asked, her voice softer now. "I'm fine," he lied, automatically swallowing the lump rising in his throat. Years of conditioning told him not to make a scene. "Don't escalate. Don't give anyone a reason to label you angry. Do you want to step outside?" "Take a moment," she offered. "No," Jamal said, shaking his head. "I'd like to stay." The class resumed, but no one was really paying attention to the syllabus overview anymore. The tension in the air was suffocating. By lunchtime, the video had already gone viral, at least viral by campus standards. 12 seconds. That's all it took. 12 seconds of shaky footage showing Lauren Whitaker stepping forward, her voice dripping with entitlement and the slap. The way Jamal stood there, not reacting, not retaliating, just standing. The freeze frame of his stunned expression became the thumbnail for every post. Someone uploaded it to the university's unofficial Reddit thread with the caption, "When generational privilege meets reality check." Other students posted it on TikTok, Instagram stories, Twitter. The hashtags multiplied. Brookstone Truth. Stand with Jamal. Privilege Unmasked. By the time Jamal returned to his dorm room, his phone was buzzing uncontrollably. Notifications from people he hadn't spoken to since orientation. Messages of support. Offers from activist groups. Some from complete strangers. But mixed in were other messages too. Anonymous DMs telling him to stop making it a race issue. Comments suggesting he had provoked her. Troll accounts demanding he apologize for causing drama. Jamal sat on the edge of his bed staring at the screen, feeling both hypervisible and painfully exposed. 3 missed calls from his mom. He couldn't bring himself to call her back. Not yet. His roommate, Devin, pushed open the door, a half-eaten sandwich in hand. "Bro, you okay?" Devin asked, the concern in his voice genuine. Yeah," Jamal said, automatically. Devin put the sandwich down. "Man, don't do that. Don't. I'm fine. Me. I saw the video. Everyone's seen it. Half the campus is talking about a protest already." "A protest?" Jamal repeated, his stomach sinking. "Yeah. The Black Student Union, some social justice orgs. Even a few professors are talking about releasing a statement." Jamal ran a hand over his face. "I didn't ask for any of this." "I know," Devin said, sitting beside him, "but it doesn't matter. It's bigger now." Across campus, Lauren sat stiffly in the dean's waiting area, her heart pounding with a different kind of fear. Her phone had been confiscated by Dean Harrington's assistant after her father's 3rd call in the span of an hour. Lauren's stomach churned as she tried to replay the morning in her mind, rationalizing, rewriting, making sense of her actions. "He provoked me," she'd whispered to her roommate before being escorted to administration. "He took my seat on purpose." But Alyssa hadn't responded. Her silence was the first crack in the Lauren's narrative. Now, sitting alone, Lauren's defenses began to unravel. The image of Jamal's face right after she slapped him, not angry, not shocked, but something worse, disappointed, as if she'd simply confirmed every terrible thing he probably already believed about people like her. The dean's door opened. "Miss Whitaker, come in." Lauren stood adjusting her sweater and taking a shaky breath before stepping inside. Lauren entered the dean's office, her heart racing, hands trembling, despite her best effort to appear composed. Dean Harrington, a tall, graying man known for his no-nonsense demeanor, sat behind his mahogany desk, reading a printed incident report. Without looking up, he said, "Close the door behind you." She obeyed, sinking into the leather chair across from him. The familiar surroundings, photos of alumni donors, awards for community service, framed articles about campus growth did little to calm her nerves. "I've reviewed the statements from Professor Rivers and several students." The dean began setting the report down and removing his glasses. "And I've seen the video." Lauren's stomach dropped. "Dean Harrington, please. This has all been blown way out of proportion. It wasn't what it looks like." "Then enlighten me," he said, folding his hands. She opened her mouth, but the words caught in her throat. Every justification she had rehearsed sounded flimsy now. That it was just a seat. That Jamal had done it on purpose. That she'd just lost control for a second. "I didn't mean to." She trailed off. The university takes physical altercations seriously, and when they're accompanied by remarks that whether you intended it or not carry racial overtones, the situation escalates further. Her heart pounded. "It wasn't about race," she blurted. "It was about my seat. I've sat there all semester." The dean leaned forward. "Miss Whitaker, when you referenced Mr. Carter's scholarship status and implied he didn't belong in this classroom, that's where intent stopped mattering and impact took over." Lauren swallowed hard. She could feel tears threatening, but fought them back. Crying wouldn't help her case now, not here. "Effective immediately, you're placed on administrative suspension pending a full disciplinary review. You'll be notified of the hearing date within the next 48 hours. Her breath caught. Suspension. "But my parents—" The board, Dean Harrington, held up a hand. "I've already spoken with your father." Lauren froze. He expressed his concerns. The dean continued, choosing his words carefully. "But the university has procedures. No one, regardless of family name, is above them." For the first time in her life, Lauren felt the walls of her privilege closing in. As she left the office, had bowed, the hallway seemed darker, heavier. Her friends had stopped texting. The once endless stream of likes on her Instagram stories had gone silent. Across campus, Jamal sat with Professor Rivers in her office. "You have options," she said gently, handing him a printed packet outlining grievance procedures, Title IX resources, and counseling support. "I don't want to escalate it," Jamal murmured, staring at the floor. "Jamal," she said, her voice soft but firm, "this isn't something you caused, and choosing to stand up for yourself isn't escalation. It's accountability." He nodded but said nothing. His phone buzzed again, more notifications. Another repost, another comment, another message from someone he didn't know, telling him he was brave, or telling him to stop playing the victim. Later that evening, Jamal finally answered one of his mother's calls. "Baby, are you all right?" Her voice cracked with worry. "I'm okay, Mama," he said, trying to sound strong. "I saw the video," she said softly. Jamal's throat tightened. "I didn't want you to worry. That's not your job, Jamal. Your job is to tell me when something like this happens." He exhaled, closing his eyes against the sting of tears. I didn't expect all this," he admitted. "No one does," she replied. "But you're not alone in this, you hear me. Not now, not ever." Across campus, a student-led petition was already circulating. Hundreds of signatures demanded the university take stronger action. Some faculty members had begun discussing an open letter of support for Jamal. The Black Student Coalition called an emergency meeting to plan a campus-wide demonstration. At the Whitaker estate on the other side of town, Gregory Whitaker sat in his study, scrolling through emails from donors and board members already working the phones to contain the fallout. "We need to control this narrative," he muttered to his assistant on speakerphone. But the narrative had already slipped from his grasp. By morning, local news outlets were calling for interviews. Reporters waited at the campus gates. Protest signs began appearing across the quad. And somewhere deep inside her dorm room, Lauren sat alone staring at the blinking cursor on her laptop screen, trying and failing to write an apology that sounded anything close to sincere. The following day, the energy on campus shifted from tension to outright mobilization. Flyers appeared on bulletin boards, dorm doors, and even slipped under classroom doors. The headline was bold and unapologetic: "Justice for Jamal's stand against racism and privilege abuse." A protest was scheduled for Friday afternoon at the Central Quad. Speakers from student organizations, local activists, and even faculty members were being lined up. Jamal stood by the window in his dorm, staring down at the growing crowd of students gathering in small clusters across the lawn. From his vantage point, he could see hand-painted signs being made, bullhorns being tested, and students practicing chants. Devin entered the room carrying a stack of water bottles. "Bro, you're trending on Twitter now," he said, shaking his head. "Local reporters are here too. I didn't ask for this," Jamal mumbled. "I know, but you're in it now, and people care. They're here because of you, and what this moment represents." A soft knock at the door interrupted them. It was Professor Rivers. "Jamal," she said gently, stepping inside. "There's a meeting with the dean and student leaders this afternoon. They want your input." Jamal hesitated. "What do they want me to say? That's up to you," she replied, "but you deserve a seat at the table." Meanwhile, Lauren sat curled up on the floor of her room, scrolling endlessly through social media. Every platform felt like a battleground. Her name was trending for all the wrong reasons. Her father's voice, stern and irritated, echoed through her voicemail. "Stay off the internet. Stay off campus. Let me handle this." But she couldn't stay away from the threads. The comments were relentless. Some accused her of being a racist. Others defended her, insisting she was being unfairly targeted because of her family name. A few former friends sent texts like, "Are you okay?" but none offered to meet her in person. Her roommate Alyssa barely spoke to her. Their once easy friendship had dissolved into cold politeness and awkward silence. A university email arrived that afternoon marked urgent notification of formal disciplinary hearing. Attendance required. Lauren's heart sank. Her father had already arranged for their family attorney to represent her, but deep down she wondered if even that would be enough. That evening, Jamal sat in a small conference room alongside representatives from the Black Student Coalition, the Latinx Alliance, and the LGBTQ+ Resource Group. Professor Rivers and Dean Harrington were present as well. "The university is drafting an official response," Dean Harrington began, his tone measured. "But we want to make sure your voices are heard." Jamal cleared his throat. "Honestly, a statement isn't enough. This can't just be swept under the rug after a few PR moves." Heads around the table nodded in agreement. "We've had too many isolated incidents," said Maya, president of the Black Student Coalition. "This is a systemic problem, and we want real change," such as Dean Harrington asked, opening his notebook. Maya didn't hesitate. Mandatory diversity and inclusion training, a review of campus disciplinary procedures, more funding for marginalized student groups, transparent reporting on racial bias complaints. Jamal added, and a public apology, not just from the university, but from Lauren. Professor Rivers watched him with quiet pride. This was the Jamal she knew, thoughtful, strategic, and unwilling to stay silent when it mattered. Later that night, Jamal sat on a bench near the quad phone, buzzing endlessly in his pocket. He pulled up the video of the slap again, watching it for the 100th time. Not for the violence, but for the moment after. That look on Lauren's face. Shock, regret, and something else. Fear. He wondered if she even fully understood why she'd reacted the way she did. Across town, in the Whitaker Estates' ornate dining room, Lauren sat at the far end of a long mahogany table, listening as her father discussed legal strategies with their lawyer. "They're going to make an example out of you," Gregory Whitaker said, pacing the room, "and I won't allow that." Lauren stared down at her untouched dinner plate, her appetite gone. For the first time in her life, she questioned whether her father's influence could fix this, and more troubling, whether it even should. The day of the protest arrived, and the Central Quad at Brookstone University transformed into something it had rarely been before, a space of collective reckoning. Hundreds of students gathered holding signs that read, "Diversity without inclusion is just optics, stand with Jamal, accountability over legacy." Jamal stood at the edge of the crowd, his heart pounding, unsure whether to step forward or remain hidden among the sea of voices. Maya spotted him and pushed through the crowd. "You coming up to speak?" she asked, her tone gentle but encouraging. "I don't know," he admitted, staring down at the speech he had scribbled in his notebook. Before he could answer, Maya grabbed the mic and started addressing the crowd. Her voice rang out with urgency. "This isn't just about one slap. This is about every time students of color have been made to feel like we're guests on our own campus. About every microaggression, every ignored complaint, every backhanded comment hidden behind a smile." Applause erupted. Nearby, Professor Rivers stood with a group of faculty, her small but visible presence signaling quiet support. Jamal's phone buzzed again. A text from his mom. "Proud of you no matter what you decide. But your voice matters, baby." His throat tightened. When Maya handed the microphone to him, Jamal hesitated for a breath, and then stepped forward. He took a deep breath and began. "I didn't want to be here, not like this. Not as some symbol or some trending hashtag." The crowd grew quiet, leaning in. "But here's the thing. For a long time I tried to stay invisible. I kept my head down. I thought if I worked hard enough, I could earn a place where things like this wouldn't happen, that I could outrun assumptions about me, about where I come from, about what I deserve. Jamal paused, scanning the faces looking back at him. But last week, when I sat at that desk, and when Lauren reacted the way she did, it reminded me that no matter how hard I work, how quiet I stay, there are people who will always see me as less. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. So, yeah. This isn't just about me. It's about the systems that allowed this to happen. And it's about making sure the next student doesn't have to go through the same thing. Thunderous applause broke out. Students raised their signs higher. For the first time in days, Jamal felt something loosen in his chest. Not relief, not yet, but something like hope. Meanwhile, in a boardroom across campus, Gregory Whitaker stood before a panel of university trustees, his voice steady but full of underlying fury. "This is a witch hunt," he said. "My daughter made a mistake. A private disagreement that's now being weaponized by campus activists and social media mobs." One trustee cleared her throat. "Mr. Whitaker, with all due respect, the issue here is not a misunderstanding. It's an assault, caught on video, with racial implications that cannot be ignored." Gregory's face tightened. "After everything my family has contributed to this university, after every building and scholarship we've funded, this is the thanks we get." Dean Harrington, seated quietly at the far end of the table, finally spoke up. "With all due respect, Mr. Whitaker, what your family contributed does not entitle your daughter to violate the university's code of conduct." The words landed like a gavel strike. For once, Gregory found himself without an immediate comeback. That afternoon, Lauren received another email from the university disciplinary hearing, scheduled for Monday at 10 a.m. Witnesses will be present. You are advised to attend with counsel if desired. Sitting on the floor of her dorm room, Lauren let the weight of the message sink in. Her phone sat on her desk buzzing with yet another ignored call from her father. Her roommate Alyssa appeared at the door, hesitant. "Hey, are you okay?" Lauren glanced up, her eyes tired and red. "Honestly, no." Alyssa shifted awkwardly, then said, "For what it's worth, I think you need to say something. Something real, not just what your dad's lawyer tells you." Lauren swallowed hard, knowing Alyssa was right, but she wasn't sure she knew how. Monday morning arrived with a heavy gray sky hovering over Brookstone University. The air felt dense, as if the entire campus was holding its breath. In the administration building, the conference room had been rearranged for the hearing. A long table stretched across the center with seats for the disciplinary committee on one side, and Lauren and her legal counsel on the other. Jamal sat at the back of the room beside Professor Rivers, flanked by Maya and other student representatives who had requested to attend as observers. Lauren entered quietly, dressed in a simple blouse, and dark jeans. Gone were the designer labels and carefully curated accessories. She looked smaller somehow, weighed down not by fashion but by the gravity of the situation. Her father wasn't with her. That had been a last-minute decision after a tense argument the night before. Lauren insisted she wanted to handle this herself. She wasn't sure if it was bravery or stubbornness, but she couldn't stomach the idea of him storming into the room trying to control the narrative again. Dean Harrington called the meeting to order. The purpose of this hearing, he began, is to review the incident involving Miss Lauren Whitaker and Mr. Jamal Carter on September 15th. This process will determine appropriate disciplinary actions under the university's code of conduct. Lauren's attorney opened with a carefully worded statement full of legal jargon and calculated remorse. Terms like momentary lapse in judgment, emotional distress, and regret for the misunderstanding floated across the table like scripted apologies. Jamal sat still, jaw clenched. When it was time for witness testimony, Professor Rivers stepped forward, first recounting the classroom incident with clarity and professionalism. Then Maya testified, emphasizing the broader campus climate and how this moment reflected larger ongoing issues. Finally, Dean Harrington addressed Lauren directly. "Miss Whitaker, you now have the opportunity to speak for yourself. You're not required to, but it may help the committee better understand your perspective." Lauren's heart pounded. Every instinct screamed at her to defer to her lawyer's pre-written statement. But as she opened her mouth, she surprised even herself. "I don't want to read the prepared statement," she began, her voice trembling, but steady enough to carry. Her attorney's head whipped toward her, but she kept going. "I need to say this in my own words." The room fell silent. "I've spent the past week thinking about what happened," she said. "Not just the slap, but everything before it, the way I spoke to Jamal, the things I implied about his place here, about his scholarship, about him." Lauren's throat tightened, but she pushed forward. "I grew up believing that I deserved everything I had, that my family's history here meant I was entitled to certain things, seats, attention, respect. I never thought about how that entitlement affects people around me, especially students who don't come from the same background." She swallowed hard, forcing herself to meet Jamal's gaze. "I hurt you," she said simply. "Not just physically. I made you feel like you didn't belong here, and I don't get to decide that. I don't get to define anyone else's worth." Jamal's expression didn't soften, but he held her gaze, allowing her to finish without interruption. Lauren continued, "I know saying sorry doesn't erase what I did, but I am sorry, truly, and I'm ready to accept whatever consequences this committee thinks are appropriate." Her lawyer sat frozen, speechless, unable to hide his frustration. Dean Harrington nodded slowly. "Thank you, Miss Whitaker." The committee adjourned briefly to deliberate. Outside in the hallway, Jamal sat beside Professor Rivers, staring at the floor. "You okay?" she asked quietly. "I don't know," he admitted. Moments later, the committee reconvened. After reviewing all testimony and considering both the incident and Miss Whitaker's statement, Dean Harrington announced the committee recommends a one-semester suspension, mandatory participation in cultural competency training, and community service with organizations focused on racial equity. Lauren nodded, exhaling in relief and resignation. Jamal remained silent, but as he stood to leave, he glanced back at her. For the first time since the incident, she saw not anger, but something closer to exhausted understanding. Neither of them smiled, but both of them, for the first time, seemed ready to move forward. Weeks passed, and the campus slowly settled, though the scars from the incident remained visible in subtle ways. Conversations that used to happen behind closed doors were now being discussed openly in classroom student lounges and administrative meetings. Jamal focused on his coursework, but something had shifted inside him. He wasn't just a student anymore. He'd become a symbol whether he liked it or not. His phone buzzed almost daily with invitations from student organizations asking him to speak, to sit on panels, to lend his name to petitions. At first, he declined most of them. But after a long conversation with his mom, he realized that staying silent now felt like complicity. So Jamal accepted an invitation to co-chair the university's new Student Equity Task Force, alongside Maya and a few faculty allies, including Professor Rivers. Their first agenda, reviewing Brookstone's disciplinary policies regarding racial bias incidents and proposing structural reforms. Late one afternoon, as Jamal sat in the library, poring over policy documents, a soft voice interrupted him. "Hey." He looked up to see Lauren standing there clutching a folder to her chest. She wore no makeup, her hair pulled back into a simple ponytail, dressed in jeans and a plain sweatshirt. Jamal blinked in surprise. "Hey," he replied cautiously. "I know this is unexpected," she began, shifting awkwardly, "but I wanted to give you this." She handed him the folder. Inside were copies of historical documents, old campus policies, demographic enrollment stats from decades past, and annotated notes about Brookstone's history with race and exclusion. "I've been researching," Lauren said, her voice low. "Since my suspension started, I thought maybe this could help with the task force." Jamal scanned a few pages, eyebrows lifting slightly. The documents included references to discriminatory admissions, practices from the 1960s, sealed disciplinary records, and trustee meeting minutes that hinted at institutional bias. "This is a lot," he said, glancing up at her. Lauren shrugged. "I guess I've got time on my hands." Jamal gave a dry half-smile despite himself. Lauren cleared her throat. "Look, I know I'm not the person anyone here wants to hear from right now, and I don't expect forgiveness or anything, but I figured the least I could do is help fix the system I've benefited from for so long." For the first time since the slap, Jamal felt something other than anger toward her. Maybe something like reluctant respect. "I'll read it," he said, tucking the folder into his bag. She nodded. "Okay, well, take care, Jamal." As she turned to leave, Jamal called after her, "Hey." "Lauren." She stopped, looking back. "Thanks," he said simply. She nodded once more before walking away. Meanwhile, in his office, Dean Harrington drafted a memo to the Board of Trustees. The subject line: proposed reforms for campus equity and accountability. For the first time in his decades-long career at Brookstone, he wasn't worried about appeasing donors. The backlash from the student body, the media attention, and the undeniable momentum for change had shifted the center of power, at least temporarily, toward the students. The memo outlined new policies: mandatory anti-bias training for faculty and staff, a revised code of conduct explicitly addressing racial harassment, anonymous bias reporting systems, a student advisory council with voting power on disciplinary actions involving racial incidents. He read over the draft, knowing it wouldn't erase the university's history, but it was a start. Out on the quad, preparations began for the upcoming Campus Day of Dialogue, an event centered on difficult conversations about race privilege and accountability. And for the first time in months, Jamal felt not peace exactly, but something close purpose. He glanced down at the folder Lauren had given him, flipping to a page with a headline from the 1970s: Students Protest Discriminatory Housing Policies at Brookstone. History, it seemed, had a way of repeating itself, but this time, maybe, just maybe, the ending could be different. The Campus Day of Dialogue arrived on a sunny afternoon, and Brookstone University's central lawn transformed once again, but this time with intention. Colorful banners lined the walkways. Booths from student organizations offered resources on racial equity, mental health, and campus history. Faculty wore small blue pins symbolizing solidarity with marginalized students. Jamal stood near the main stage, gripping a folded sheet of paper. His stomach churned, but he felt a steadiness in his chest he hadn't felt before. His mother had traveled up from their hometown to attend. She stood at the front of the crowd, beaming with pride, holding her phone at the ready to record his speech. When Dean Harrington introduced him, applause erupted. Jamal stepped forward, adjusted the microphone, and began. 6 months ago, I walked into a classroom thinking it would be just another day. I didn't know that one seat, one confrontation, would change my life. A hush settled over the crowd. I didn't ask to become a symbol, and honestly, I would have preferred not to be. But sometimes moments find you, and you're forced to decide who you're going to be in response. He paused, scanning the sea of faces. This isn't about revenge. It's not about tearing people down. It's about building something better, about making sure Brookstone is a place where no student has to wonder if they belong. The audience burst into applause. As Jamal stepped back, he caught sight of Lauren, standing off to the side near a booth labeled Unpacking Privilege, a historical look at Brookstone's past. She wasn't on stage, she wasn't holding a mic, but she was there handing out informational brochures she'd helped create during her suspension, answering questions from students with quiet humility. Their eyes met briefly. Jamal gave a small nod. Lauren nodded back. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet, maybe not ever, but it was acknowledgement. Later that evening, after the event ended and most of the crowd dispersed, Jamal sat on the steps of the Student Union building, staring at the sunset. Professor Rivers approached, taking a seat beside him. "You did good today," she said. He smiled faintly. "Thanks. Feels like the beginning of something." She nodded. Change always starts this way. Slow, messy, uncomfortable, but real. As they sat in companionable silence, Jamal's phone buzzed again, this time with a different kind of notification. A university-wide email had just gone out. Brookstone University formally announces new institutional reforms addressing racial equity and student safety. Details attached. Jamal opened the attachment, scanning the list: expansion of the scholarship fund, mandatory bias training, historical archive project on race and campus history, a permanent student-faculty advisory board. He exhaled slowly. Across campus in her dorm room, Lauren received the same email. She read it with a complicated mixture of relief and sadness. Her father had withdrawn financial support weeks earlier, after she refused to recant her apology. Now she worked 2 part-time jobs to cover her expenses while completing her community service and counseling requirements. But for the first time in her life, Lauren felt like she was moving towards something honest. She opened her laptop, returning to her research on Brookstone's history of exclusion, typing notes for a future project she wasn't even sure would get university approval. But she'd submit it anyway. Because silence, she now understood, was just another form of complicity. As the day faded into night, both Jamal and Lauren sat in separate corners of campus, united not by friendship or forgiveness, but by something perhaps more enduring: the decision to face hard truths and to choose better day by day. Not an ending, a beginning. This story reminds us that real change doesn't happen overnight. It starts with uncomfortable conversations, owning our mistakes, and choosing every day to build a community where everyone is seen, heard, and valued. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel. Together we can keep growing this community and keep telling stories that matter. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers so we can bring you even more impactful narratives like this one.